Hello, namaste, beautiful souls. Happy Saturday to you. And today I am back. I'm determined to complete this series for you. There's been a few series on my channel that haven't come to completion. And this one I would very much like to make my way through the entire major arcana, which will complete the series, particularly reading and trying to absorb more of the mythology from the Mythologia, Fennica tarot. So that is an intention, and whether or not that winds up in this year or takes a little longer, I planned to keep at this, okay, before I start the next thing. Saying that, however, we are approaching year end 2025, and for many years now I have done tarot card of the year readings for each of the tarot cards. And this morning I talked a little bit about the number 10 and 2026 being a number 10, and just doing preliminary reflections on what I might do this year. Hello, Donna. Welcome back. And whether or not I end up doing 20 plus readings this year, I have yet to say that. But I was just thinking that wouldn't it be a lot easier to do a reading for the 10 card and then to set you up with a spread and some direction for doing your own tarot card of the year reading for 2025, just with various ways that I have come to expand my readings over the years. Welcome, Dee. So just giving that some thought. Time to simplify things, make my life a little bit easier, enjoy the holidays. So warm welcome, Saturday. Lovely to have you here. If you're new, my name is Sadhana, and I've been reading for some time. I am a healer, and I also work in the public education system, and this is one of my favorite places to be. And if I just open up the cards, so today I thought we could have a discussion about the Hierophant, the 5th Arcanum, and the 9th Arcanum. These are two cards that sometimes, can be difficult to understand or differentiate. And so let's spend a little bit of time with that today. I, believe it or not, went back and reread the Hierophant description from Marie White's Tarot of the Landscapes of the Abyss. Watched a little bit of her interview with Kesha from Tarot Map. And I've kind of been all over the place since I signed off this morning for my Advent calendar and just reflecting on these cards. And I have found myself in a really interesting place for this 5th Arcanum. And look how similar. And interestingly, I'm going to use Witch Sister for a reading in a little bit. Look how similar the shaman from Mythologia Fennica and the ancestor from Greenwood Tarot look. Blue background, drum. Drum is on the same side of the body. The antlers, it's really quite something. So I think there's something here to that. Now the ancestor stands at the edge of the forest. And I invite you just to think for a minute. Hi, Mary Beth. I invite you to think for a minute what the forest represents. And as you know, when we enter into the woods, it becomes darker and darker, depending, of course, on the woods that you're in and the nature of the canopy. But I'm not sure that I had really thought about that before. And the ancestor stands at this gateway. The shaman, on the other hand, stands at the gateway between worlds and often takes us into our darkness. Susanna Salo, Mythologia Fennica, she writes about the training that is required of shamans that often takes 7 years, I suppose, depending on the tradition. And I was reflecting on some of her writing and my own experience in shamanic training. And when I began my journey, our first exercise was to go back to our birth. And we all did a tremendous research, not everyone being able to talk to their mother of birth about the actual experience of being enceinte, the experience of coming into this world. And the first part of our process in that course was to, and it was a year-long course, not 7 years, 1 year long, of healing and understanding how we came into this world. When we were in the direction of the jaguar, the direction of the west, we worked with death and did death ceremonies and things like that. And it was, I can't really put into words the experiences or describe the experiences that I had, but let's just say that they shook me to my core. I really felt completely undone. And when I was reading Susanna Salo's words, and she was describing the journey of the shaman being born into, no one can choose to be a shaman. They're born into a family, and they undertake that journey, likely at a certain age. It's certainly not an easy path to take. And then I reflect on my friend Partha, who is a priest in India and in West Bengal. And his life journey, his father was a priest, and this is the caste that he was born into, and his destiny was to be a priest. And I think of the what he has endured to become a priest. And so I don't know, I feel like I've been kind of deep in this, and like I said earlier, listening to Marie White talk about her Hierophant card and her shift of energy from one Hierophant to another, and this idea of the figure at the front of the card being the gatekeeper to our individual darkness journey kind of puts a different light on what this card may represent. If we look at these two arcana, energy, like elementally, they're both earth. Astrologically, one is mutable, one is fixed. And I think both of these signs being earth, it might be another reason why these two cards get mixed up quite a bit. But what I want to look at here is the Hierophant as the, not just the earlier stage or the gatekeeper of the path, and the Hermit as the one that has entered inside, but more of a sort of a fluid process of these two experiences. And notice here too, we're not looking at cardinal earth. The devil isn't here as part of this discussion, and we could certainly add that to the discussion. If the devil opens, so the devil is cardinal earth, right? The devil opens the gateway, and then we kind of get lost in the fifth arcanum before we make our way through and out in the ninth arcanum. So there's a few different ways we could look at this journey of Hierophant and Hermit. Interesting as well, too, that they both start with the same letter in English anyway. And I know a lot of these decks here have shifted the name, shifted that energy. Susanna Sallow writes that the initiation of the Hierophant was all about studying, dismantling, and comprehending, and then finally rebuilding one's own psyche. A true healer always begins his journey by healing himself. She goes on to talk about being cautious about how we view teachers and how we view and respond to the information that is disseminated by various teachers, spiritual teachers, religious leaders, and so forth, and even in extension, leaders and speakers from all institutions, because this card in extension can represent that as well too. And so as an archetype, this is certainly one who has studied and trained in some capacity. And there's this idea of a flow of energy through and moving out from this person. And yet there's a great deal of work that this figure has done. So it's a little confusing when you take this examination to a whole other level. You know, we sometimes forget about the journey of theology school, the journey of preaching in some remote location, and then maybe coming into a larger town to work. It's, I don't know, I tend to see this card in quite a favorable way. Unfortunately, I don't have stories of my life being, damaged, traumatized by the church or such an institution. I've been really fortunate to have had the freedom to explore all kinds of spirituality in a rather free way, and been able to find guides that I trusted wherever I went. So, very fortunate. The guidebook for the Greenway Tarot Greenwood Tarot for the major arcana certainly has much more information than the minors. And I want to read a little bit from the ancestor card. The antlered figure of the ancestor is clad in reindeer skins and evergreen leaves, and stands at the gateway to the greenwood, framed by the bone-like white of winter, silver birch trees. These trees grew during the ice ages and are one of the first trees to regenerate. The reindeer once roamed the vast tracts of forest that are the true ancestors of our post-ice age oak woodlands, and it is known that they always used the same trackways through the landscape. Thus, ice age hunters would follow their paths year upon year, hunting their major source of food, marking time by their regular and predictable migration. When reindeer retreated north with the melting ice, their mythology was replaced by the white hart, who glimpsed and tracked into the forest. The ancestors' tracks also lead into the greenwood. The morning is clear and frosty, with the first glimmer of dawn shimmering on the horizon, where the new moon hangs with the morning star, representing the new day and the awakened soul. The ancestor greets you as you walk up to the path that leads to the forest. And before I comment on Dee's comment, I read your comment. Now I lost my train of thought. The Hierophant is a channel for me, whereas the Hermit has entered into the forest. And I want to carry on with that in a second. Dee offers that the Hierophant feels like the past, the devil is the present, and the Hermit is my future. And that makes a lot of sense, because I feel that the energy of the devil is very much an energy that represents the challenges of the life here and now. And it is this fine line that we walk between the horror of living life here and now as a human and the joy and wonderment of it. And yes, I read that this morning as well too. Marie White does talk about that in her book, that the revealer of the sacred. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I feel like with the Hierophant card, as we walk up to the Hierophant, and you can replace that word with any guide, any guru, the challenge, one of the greatest challenges, is to figure out, what are you going to ask? If you could have darshan, if you could have a personal meeting with an enlightened one, with someone that could actually guide you on your path, what would you ask? When I go to the ashram in India that I'm associated with, if Swamiji is present, there may be an opportunity for a meeting, and you can request that. I've never had a one-on-one darshan with her. However, I did, last time I was there, I put my name in, and I spent days and days just thinking, if that was accepted, what would I actually ask? And that is, I don't know, this one of the, I'm not sure that I ever came up with a significant question. And I've heard in a larger group, where people have an opportunity to ask an enlightened one a question. And I feel that some of the questions are just shockingly insignificant to ask one so aware and awake. What are you going to ask? That is the subject of a wonderful cry-on parable about a mother and a baby. The right question for the baby to ask the mother was, tell me what you want to know. And that is so beautiful, of course, because the baby is closer to God. The baby has been in that energy more recently. That's really, thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful, Donna. I love the energy of the drum. And in many traditions, there is drumming or some other instrument, a drone of some kind, that goes on and on. And it is, I think, a wonderful way to get into the frequency that is necessary for not only asking the kind of question that would change your life forever, but finding a way to meet this experience. Some days, if I'm very fortunate, someday, if I'm very fortunate, I meet a wise one, an old soul, but this depends on me recognizing that soul. Yeah, that is also very true. And so I was looking at this card in a different way. And I wonder if the Hierophant is also asking, are you ready to enter into the forest? Are you equipped to enter into the forest? Are you sufficiently prepared to enter the forest? And what's going through my little brain right now are those early years that I traveled as a solo traveler, as a single young white woman. And I certainly was not prepared. I thought I was. I had a university education. I thought I was quite clever. I was very open. Physically, I was able-bodied, certainly able-bodied and able-minded. So I think all of these questions really might give a little more pause to the energy of this card. Margaret Peterson has I'll read you the poem for this one, shall I? Says, knower of stars, priest, shaman, initiated into the movement of the planets and the wisdom of the serpent, guarding the keys to the realm of the unconscious. Guarding the keys to the realm of the unconscious. So this is what I was feeling here, that one of the roles of the Hierophant is the gatekeeper, to ask you if you are truly ready to enter. The gesture of your hand shows your calling, enlightened to choose the way of service, transforming suffering into knowing. We get to know the universe. A breath heralds your existence. And so, prepare the way to meet your fate and destiny. And perhaps I, as the Hierophant, you can spend time with me, not me, Sadhana, but the Hierophant archetype. Spend time with the Hierophant to prepare the way. I can help. Maybe the Hierophant can help you to prepare the way before you enter into the darkness of your own journey. The 5 of Hierophant in the tarot is also connected with the minor 5s. All of the challenges of the minor 5s. those places that we must journey through in order to reach the 6 through the 10. And often those 5s linger for years, and it takes us through a lot of anguish to navigate those 5s. There was one thing I read in Landscapes of the Abyss by Marie White this morning, and that was something that really stuck, and that was our focus on the external, the need that we have for external satisfaction. We want to fuel ourselves. We want to nourish ourselves and drink in all that is without. The consumerism, I don't know what it is, the social media. She didn't talk about this, but I was just really thinking about how we feed ourselves with everything that is external. Now, if I think about her card and the babies on the breasts of the Hierophant, without looking at the odd depiction of the babies. And maybe they become that odd because they solely feast on what is given to them. And she didn't really talk about this. I felt like there was a separation between the depth of the words in Landscapes of the Abyss and her ability as a interviewee. I feel like the interview didn't do justice to some of the things I have read and thought about in Landscapes of the Abyss. And so if we only feed on the external, maybe that is a sign or a symbol we're not ready to enter into the forest. And the longer that we feed on the external, the more horrific our life becomes. Right? The 5s can go either way. And when I think of my suspension bridge, that's one of my images for the 5s. Depending on the weather, depending on your mental state at the time, how long the suspension bridge is, what condition the bridge is in, it can be very difficult to cross, and we may just need to turn around and regroup for a while. And I think that's why we meet in places like this, where we can find like-minded souls to drink in reflection such as this. Yeah. The Hermit, the crone, and this story here. I will read part of that to you as well too, and I think it's Vainamoinen who enters into this giant's mouth, and the journey that Vainamoinen takes into the darkness inside this giant is indeed the journey to understanding himself. And I think part of the I have it makes me sad about the lack of sophistication in education in general these days. The level of conversation that people are not having, even about the simplest of things. The way that most people just want to stay on the surface and not dive into the darkness, dive into the deeper conversations and the deeper meanings. I have a very hard time socially because, I don't really enjoy small talk. I don't enjoy professional sports. And I think about some of the social gatherings that I get invited to, and it can be really difficult when you decide that the world in which you want to live is not shared by most of the people around you. So I'm grateful for my children who are, and some of the small circles that I get to visit occasionally. Yeah. All right, so I want to share this myth because really this series is focused on understanding and reflecting on mythology and this unfamiliar mythology from Finland. And can I ask you this? What aspect of 2025 as a 9-year led you to a darker part of your own journey and a deeper understanding of who you are? Okay. When Vainamoinen, so that is the card of the emperor, proposed to the maid of Pohjola, she gave him a task to fashion a boat by using his knowledge and spells. Vainamoinen began his work, but 3 words were missing from his spell, and the boat was left incomplete. Okay, now just those couple of sentences could be read in such a profound way, and I think they also speak to the power of Vok, which is a yogi term that refers to the power of the word. And if we misinterpret word through translation, we assume that a particular word means the same thing today as it did thousands of years ago. Of course, we're going to have an incomplete boat. He went to Tuonela in search of them, but failed. That's when a shepherd advised him to seek out Antero Vaipunen, a gigantic sage who had lain dead for so long that the trees were already growing on his shoulders, brow, and beard. He would have the words. The journey to Vaipunen was difficult, for the road was covered with swords and needles that the traveler was forced to tread. The spiritual journey isn't easy, and courage and self-confidence are required to see it through. But Vainamoinen had them, and with guts and a strong will to boot, they helped him survive this journey, which symbolized spiritual purification. He woke the sleeping sage by felling the trees from his brow and jamming an iron spear into his mouth. This didn't please the old giant, who refused Wainamoinen's requests. But then he yawned so widely that Wainamoinen slipped, fell into the mouth, and was swallowed. I really would love to take this story almost sentence by sentence and journal my way through it. I think it's, and there are a lot of journey epics that you could do something similar and really think about the darkness of your own journey. I'm not going to read more because I want to do a reading today on these two cards. And another layer that I want to keep coming back to is that the darkness equals the feminine. The darkness, understanding the darkness, awakens our receptivity. Understanding the darkness awakens the goddess within. The layers that we can take these writings and these reflections to are so very, very powerful. And how wonderful that he slipped into the mouth of the sleeping giant accidentally on his journey to finding the word. So I'm traveling by car a lot these days. My commute's quite long, and I've been listening to audiobooks, and I just finished The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown. There's parts of that story that are kind of horrific, but I really quite enjoyed it. And I'm just finding crossover here between some of those things. So what I thought I would do today is this. I thought I would do a reading for the Hermit and the ancestor to receive a message from each for our individual interpretation and reflection for today. There's something very earthy about this particular tarot deck, and that is why I reached for it. I'm going to do a first part of the first operation just to see where these majors live in the reading. And I ask for information about these two archetypes and what we might learn from them on this 6th day of December 2025 as we enter into the darker days of this year. Help to support our study of these archetypes so that we may understand our own journeys more deeply. And as always, I ask this message be in the highest for the greatest good, and that no harm be done. So be it. In a way, I want to look at the earth pile first to see if either of these archetypes is at home here, and then kind of go from there. So yes, the Hierophant is here, and the Hermit is not. So what might I read into that? That the Hierophant indeed is here with us in the earth pile. in Malkut, guiding and supporting our journey here. Where might the Hermit be? Well, it would make sense that the Hermit is in the water pile. Yes, this is an earth element, but this is a message of flow and journey. So it would be kind of beautiful if the Hermit were here. So the Hermit's not here, which says something to me in that the Hermit at this time, and you can talk about this archetypally, just society. You can make it personal. You can make it oriented to your country, its politics, your own community. The Hermit is not flowing well through life. Is there an overreactivity to this, or is the Hermit lost in the mind? And I'm going to go here. Just curious. And this process to me is so interesting. I don't know if any of you use this process, but I have learned so much from it. Lots of maids here, and the devil is here. Okay, so I don't think I missed it. So that means the Hermit is in the pile of fire, which is an enormous pile. Yeah, it's here. That's the Hermit. Okay. Fire and earth. There's something else I might read here too, in that there is a reflection between these two suits. There is right? So not suits, the energy of these elements. There is a reflection here. So sometimes the suit of wands, the energy of fire, is seen as our path, our dharma. Can be our work, but it's our path in a greater way. Like you could use the term our great work. Whereas what is happening in the suit of pentacles, the suit of earth, feels more practical. It helps to pay the bills. It's about the nuts and bolts of life. And that's where the ancestor is. That's where the Hierophant is. And the Hermit maybe is helping to redirect us on our path. So not necessarily a negative interpretation. However, I think in its highest sort of energetic frequency, I would want to have seen the Hermit in the water pile. And this is not necessarily a reading. This is just a reflection to share with you different ways that you might reflect and study on these cards. Now, for this card, the Ancestor, which in this deck looks a lot like a karma card or an ancestor card or a there's a card like this in the Osho Zen too, a past life, that's what it's called. I think it's the moon card, past lives. It looks something like this. That we carry the wisdom and the tradition of our ancestors within us. We are the sum total of all of their experiences. And the figure on the front of this card acknowledges that they are, it's They acknowledge and give thanks to all those who came before them. Okay. However, let's see what is on either side of this. And this is where you might go into a reading or a lesson of the Hermit card for yourself at this time. So on one side, I have the Tree of Life, which is the Emperor, which looks like a mighty oak, the base of a mighty oak. There's a hollow that's formed in the tree that takes on the shape of a heart. I see a bit of a green man here that looks more like a dwarf, making the heart, the belly of the dwarf. And of course, I'm not reading from the guidebook. I'm just going to read the cards and read the images. But I like that and there are lots of decks that do this. So the Emperor card is a mighty evergreen tree. The Sun, which looks kind of playful on the other side of this card, energizes all of this, brings it to light, brings it to life. If you're curious, Eight of Stones would be the next card, and then we have the King of Trees, King of Wands. And there is an energy of everything moving this way. So what is the message of the Hierophant? I would say that the path is indeed open, that everything is aligned. All of this is moving in a similar direction. And if I read from this particular card to the Eight of Stones, it feels like you know exactly where you want to go. That the King of Fire, your King of Fire, your strongest light within, knows what it wants to hold and knows where it wants to lead. And this understanding of choosing a path. What if we look at also this card as you stand before the gateway of the Hierophant, you have a pillar on your left, a pillar on your right. And maybe this is one of these places we're talking about asking the right question. I'm thinking of poetry, where you have to choose a path and you choose a direction. Well, what I'm seeing here is that in your heart of hearts, your gut of guts, you know exactly where you need to go, and it is supported and it is strong. And so for each of you, know that I think this is a message of trust. Trust that you know exactly where to go. For everyone who's wandered into this reading or watching a playback or made it this far in the video and looking at this array of cards, this is a message of yes, step in. Step in. Trust your fire within. There's this really interesting, so that gut instinct, I've got butterflies in my stomach. There's a bunch of expressions about that. And when we're looking at chakra associations, there's this association between what we see and how our stomach responds. And so this is something interesting to reflect on. That is, how do you feel in your gut when you see something like this? And I would say that it should feel true. It should feel very, very true. Okay. I also want to remind you that these cards were in the earth pile, and that this pile of cards indicates that which is practical, that which is here, that which is tangible, and we can certainly manage. You know, it's not challenging. Okay, so this feels all very doable, and for me, this feels very, very optimistic. Now, the Hermit, I said, kind of disappointingly so, wasn't in the water pile. That's where I wanted it to be. It was in the fire pile. And again, when I think about that, it makes me think that maybe there is a little redirection that is necessary. That while in our gut we know where we want to go, there's some correction that may be needed. FedEx is just pulling up at my house, and my dog is going to go nuts, so I will have to mute my microphone in a moment. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so and I also want to note, this is a really large pile of cards. And that also says something to me. Just give me a moment. I'm just going to see if I can. Sorry, that was easier than the dog going nuts. So I was saying something about this is a huge pile of cards, which of course I could count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 20, I think 27. Two, 3, 4, 5, 27. It's a 9. Okay. What does that mean? Does that mean there's a lot of choice? That there's a lot of work to do here? In this energy of the waning moon, does this mean that the reflection and integration of all that each of us are working through individually needs time? Some really beautiful cards here. Okay, where was it? There it is. There's the Hermit. And I'll just put down the same number of cards that I did. So this is 10 of trees, Witch of stones, and witches would be the equivalent to the knights in this deck. Gosh. You know what? I feel like I've kind of goofed here. I don't know if this was next or this was next. I think it was here. Okay. Now, there's something different about this group of cards. For the most part, everything's going in the same direction, but the Hermit and the Three of Stones are forward facing, and that just feels a little different energetically. I also want to note that we have another 8 of Stones here, 8 of Water here. 8 wants to keep the energy moving. All right, let's focus on the 2 cards on either side of the Hermit. Something with what I said about all of this and the fact that the 10 of Trees is here, trees being the suit, the element in which this card did appear. So this was in the pile of trees itself. Queen of Trees is here, 10 of Trees are here, among probably many other trees. And that to me feels like this path that we find ourselves upon, we have walked before. And now is the time to see this path through to the end. What I was sensing was this need for adjustment, maybe finding a new path. And I think that this card, in a way, with this whole story, signifies that an aspect of what we've been working on is coming to an end. And I think 10 of Trees in combination with 8 of Water, both looking in the same direction, is pointing towards something new, a new growing point. And then we are offered here 3 stones in the hand of this particular witch sister. Dee knew it would be in the fire before I found it. And then says, the Hermit has been muted for so long. Push out the way. I feel that it's so easy for us to stay in the familiar, stay in the comfortable. And to see something through and go on to the next level requires incredible self-discipline. And I think that is one of the things that is lacking in our communities and our society, is the degree of self-discipline that is required to know oneself, to make greater meaning in one's life. And so if there is an overall message here today from these 2 important archetypes, one is an acknowledgement that indeed there is energy around this, and you know where to go. But I think there's an admission that part of what you've been working on, can I say that? It's not hard enough. It's too easy. I feel like the 10 of Wands is saying, okay, let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up and go forward in another way. No, you don't find it in text. And if you were watching this morning, where are the cards I was looking at? It's so interesting how this all kind of weaves together. So I don't know if the cards are where they might be. Maybe they're on the back of this. Or maybe I shuffled it. I probably shuffled it. I was looking at tens this morning, and I had this deck out, the Javarso Daydream Tarot, and I was looking at the tens, and all the tens in this deck are sort of opening and ready for this next part of the journey. And I feel there's a hesitation here and not wanting to go on to this. So thank God that we're moving into a 10-year, and maybe this is going to help. There'll be some fuel behind this to push us forward through and onto this next path. Ah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. And in extension, this tendency to have to deliver everything in a short period of time. Everything we need to know, we can learn in a 4-minute video. That kind of idea. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today and adding to this conversation and helping each other to deepen our understanding of these archetypes and how we might work with the tarot. I appreciate you all, and I will see you soon. Take good care. Namaste.